Hello, and welcome back to the Stories of Northern Life podcast, brought to you by the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. I'm your host, Nicole, and today I bring you another episode in our Spookytober series. As I said last week, today is going to be a little bit of a different episode. Instead of looking at a true crime case, we are going to be looking at someone who covered true crime and wrote several books on the matter. Now, if you know your Sioux history, you probably have already guessed who I'm talking about, and that's Brian Vallee. He was born Brian Michael Vallee in 1940 here in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. In 1953, so when he was 13 years old, he was delivering papers for the Sault Star. He attended Sault Collegiate, and after graduating, he got a job at the Sault Star. On November 15th, 1962, he published his first article in the Sault Star, titled Mountains of Sand, in readiness as temperatures drop in Sault. And over the years, he would write a variety of articles, and these ranged from articles titled Sioux Principal Praises Work of Student Councils, Father of Mayor McIntyre, former wrestling champion, Sioux Teenage Sex Life Revealed by Star Survey, Reports on Teenage Sex Surprise to Sioux Adults, Hectic Life for Leader of City Schools Students, Grade 12 Student is Tech President, Girls School President Proud of Appointment, College Standards Decided by Costs of Administration, Large Universities Provide More Facilities for Study, Immigrant Delicacies Enjoyed in the Sioux, Problems of alcoholics acute at festive season, Children's Library Story Time is best, Desire to stop drinking only requirement of AA, 13 steps to alcoholism outlined, Library spends $18,000 on new books, Do-it-yourself accidents keeping local hospitals busy, and in this one he actually had to play a stuntman so that they could have a picture accompanying the article. There was also articles that he wrote titled Sioux to Florida, New Highway Interchange System Making Life Easier for Motorists. A series that I thought was really funny was Weird Hairdos Abound. And so this was a two-part series. This first one was on the new crazy hairstyles of women. So this was published March 11th, 1963. So we have all the crazy sort of beehive styles of women. We have the Intrigue, Delicate, Little Boy, Lotus, and Rome. And so he was taking pictures, showing them, talking about them. And then the next one was titled Pardon My Curls. And this was all about the men's hairstyles of 1963. So we have the ducktail, flat top, Princeton, square, and brush. And so every decade, new hairstyles and just fashion styles would change, and so he was writing about all these crazy new ones that are appearing at the beginning of the 60s. He also wrote more serious articles like Area Conservation Authority stirs up much controversy, polls more votes but still loses, views differ on area authority, Elliott Lake hopes spurred by program, tourist industry could be doubled, salesman claims, no one to help hemorrhaging alderman, barking dog locates body, agencies issue warning to small boat operators. And so you see that he was able to have some funny, some heartfelt pieces, and more serious pieces, and even a little bit of true crime in there about a dog that was able to help locate a body. But here, on Thursday, June 13th, 1963, this is where he had a whole page article all to himself. And this was titled, "Taking a Beating, Wooden Poles," all about how wooden lampposts and electric poles were being hit by cars, trucks, even dump trucks, in all these different car accidents. And it was a pretty interesting article with a lot of pictures showing just how much these poor wooden poles were taking a beating. He also wrote things like female mosquitoes, Algoma campers and boaters, tragic drownings, recalled 6 young people perished. And so this was the 37th anniversary of the boating tragedy, where 6 teens passed away in a boating accident on the St. Mary's River. I might cover this in next year's Spookytober series. And so he was covering this case. There was also Elliott Lake Mines to remain open, plan stops, 1 closing, Elliott Lake developing tourism, beauty leads parades. So these were where the plant beauties were taking part in the community night parade on the Algoma Steel Corporation float. We also have Sioux Children in Hospital keeps nursing staff on toes. And here we also have the start of an interesting series that was talking about the different monuments, memorials, plaques that were up around the city. And so it came with an editor's note, and it says, "In conjunction with the unveiling of another historical plaque in the Sioux, tomorrow the Star will carry a series of articles on the existing monuments in the city. This is the first," and it was published by Brian Vallee. And it says, "Time and effort expended to make Cenotaph a reality." Then we have solemn reminder, Sioux's War Memorial plaque contributed by area industry. Unveil new plaque in Sioux commemorates raid of 1814. And so this was the plaque that the Ontario Archaeological and Historic Sites Board put out. So this is a provincial plaque that they put up, and it was installed at the Sioux Locks in the parking lot that's just below the hill that leads up to the canal main office and things like that. So it was just there. It was taken away some time ago. Not exactly sure when, not sure why they even removed it. But this plaque was titled "American Raid on Sault Ste. Marie, 1814." And it talked about how the Americans came through in the War of 1812 and 1814 and razed the city. The only building that was left standing on either side of the river was Mr. Ermitinger's house. They even burned our fur trading post and the canoe and bateau lock. And so this was a new plaque that they were unveiling, but also, unfortunately, this one isn't around anymore. And then we have another article that he did on Sioux's Historic Bateau Lock Memorial to Past Adventure. So I believe it was last year or sometime before I did an article about this, and it was actually Mr. Clerg and his men who uncovered this again. So after the War of 1812, they just covered it up because it was all sort of rubble after the American raid, and Clerg helped to restore it. So this is the restored lock, the best to their ability, using all the original foundations and layout. We also have Locke's monuments, recall intrepid Brule find, and this is another one that is out at the Sioux Locks, but also it talks about the memorial for the war dead, which is directly next to the Algoma Conservatory building. So you have the Algoma Conservatory building, that monument, and then the canoe lock or bateau lock replica right there. Then we have Jesuits played important role. So it's talking about the early missionaries and explorers, the monuments that we have of them. So the one that's at Precious Blood and things like that. Other articles that he went on to write were about the schools. So pupils grow faster than population. So looking at how the enrollment for these schools has greatly increased around 1963, and the schools had to accommodate this growing population. Another full-page article he had was titled "Youngsters' Summer Spent in Hospital, Unfortunates, Walls Replace Blue Sky." And so this was published September 5th, 1963. And here he covers another topic in Cora, and it says the municipal scene authority should help Cora. And there's a note that accompanies this article, and it says, "Mr. Vallee is a Star's man covering Cora Council activities. From time to time, he will give his views on the happenings in the township. Today, he deals with the formation of an area conservation authority, which Cora Council finally agreed to after months of hesitating." So he would help to cover the activities of the Cora Council for about a year. And so that leads us to the end of 1963, and that's when he started his studies at Michigan State University. And during this time, he would continue to write for the Sault Star. And at the end of 1964, we see that he and two other Sault Star reporters traveled to Europe for a press tour. And now when he returned, they were writing pieces on their travels. So things like their experiences touring the Edinburgh Castle and things like that. But one interesting piece I found was that he was talking about the boat that he traveled on, because it was the same one that Lee Harvey Oswald took when he came back to the States in 1962 with his new wife. And so here's sort of more of, I kind of see the beginnings of his true crime writing, because yes, he sort of did cover some cases that were sort of true crime before, but this is something that he really dove into himself to investigate and report on. And in this piece, he was looking at like, what would Lee Harvey Oswald's time on the ship have looked like? Was he just sort of sitting there and plotting and things like that? So it was really interesting piece, and I thought it was sort of just an interesting sort of one of the first glimpses that I see of him veering towards his future work. Another interesting part that I found was while he was working at the Sault Star, he began to play for the softball team for the Sioux Business League, and it was the Newsies team, so the team for the newspaper. In the spring of 1967, he graduated and received his BA in journalism from Michigan State University. It's then that he began to work for the Lansing State Journal while he was working towards his MA. In 1968, he had no articles published in the Sault Star, but they started up again the following year in 1969. Also in April of that year, he married his first wife, Margit Minister from the Sioux, and they moved down to Windsor, and he then began to work for the Windsor Star. And up until 1971, so still while he was working for the Windsor Star, he was actually still publishing articles for the Sault Star. In 1974, he moved to Toronto and began to write for the Toronto Sun and later the Toronto Star. Now, he did eventually remarry, and now I'm not entirely sure what happened with his first wife. Did they get divorced or whatnot? But I do know that he did remarry, and I believe her name was Nancy, or at least the woman who was with him at the very end, her name was Nancy. So unfortunately, I didn't really have enough time to begin looking into that. But over the years, I did find that he worked as a journalist for newspapers in England and the US. As we saw, he was also working for the Lansing State Press. But then in 1978, he began to work as a producer for CBC's The Fifth Estate. And now this is an investigative documentary series that began airing in 1975. So this year, it's celebrating its 50th anniversary, just like the Edmund Fitzgerald is celebrating its 50th anniversary. So stay tuned to learn about what we might be doing for that anniversary. And so he was with the Fifth Estate until about 1989. And it was at this time that the Fifth Estate aired an episode on Jane Hirschman. And so she killed her abusive ex-husband, William, or Billy, Stafford, on March 11th, 1982. Now she was eventually acquitted of his murder, and this whole story really inspired Vallee, and he went on to do a lot more research and eventually write his award-winning novel Life with Billy, and this was published in 1986. And then he would go on to write the sequel Life After Billy in 1995. And with this, he became a lifelong advocate for awareness of domestic abuse and violence against women. He spoke at many conferences and took part in documentaries focusing on battered women and bringing awareness to women living with abuse. Now, if you remember from last year's case of Angelina Napolitano, you remember that I said she was the first one to use the battered women's defense. Brian Vallee would eventually go on to write The War on Women in 2007, and this book focused on domestic violence, abusive relationships, and Canada's legal response to domestic abuse. He wrote other books on true crime. So the first was a fictional one. It was called Pariah, and it was about a fictional killer. This book only had a short printing run, so it is a lot more difficult to find. So you might not find it. It's not one of his more well-known works, as it is his only fictional work. But the other two books he wrote were on very real cases and criminals. So we have Edwin Alonzo Boyd, The Story of the Notorious Boyd Gang, published in 1997, as well as The Torso Murderer, The Untold Story of Evelyn Dick in 2001. And so this is the first book that I really kind of came across from Brian Vallee. So I knew of Brian Vallee, I kind of knew about Life with Billy and Life After Billy, but I hadn't spent too much time really looking into it. But I started looking more into the Evelyn Dick case as when I was working at Oklahoma University, because as we'll get to in a little bit, all of his archives, research, and all that were donated to Oklahoma University. I had to do a research request for the Evelyn Dick case and Brian Vallee's research on it. And so looking into it, I found the case so intriguing of what this woman was capable of with the murder of her husband, how she was able to hide it, to convince other people to basically commit the crime for her, and how she was able to weave this whole story for the police and take them on this wild goose chase and everything like this, and how they were unweaving this tale for the courts, and also how they began to find out more about Evelyn and that she had other victims. She didn't just murder or have her husband murdered, I should say. She also murdered some of her kids, as she didn't want to be tied down as a mother. She wanted to be able to be free and marry somebody rich to have a big and fancy life. And so her tale is one that is, yes, very intriguing, but also very unknown. One reason for that, it could be because it's a Canadian case, but also the torso murder, as they called it, would eventually be overshadowed by the Cleveland torso murders. And so anytime you would try to search up the torso murder, you'll most likely just get the results for the torso murders. So this is just another reason why this case, this story is buried. So Brian Vallee was able to go and find these stories and bring them to light and tell the stories not only of the murderers and suspects, but the story of the victims and what truly happened to them, and the search for justice for them. In 2005, Brian Vallee and another Sioux native, Les Payette, founded West End Books, a small publishing company named after the area he grew up in. From these stories written about him by friends and others, they described him as someone who was always willing to help out, who could never say no. They also said that he took so much pride in his journalism, and he was very serious. He needed the work to be accurate and true. There was also so much more that he wanted to do, but his fight with cancer made this work difficult. On May 14th, 2011, he was admitted to St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto, and on June 22nd, he had passed away. He knew he was sick for a while, but the cancer snuck up hard and fast in the end. In 2010, he began to donate his records to Algoma University so that his work could be saved, and also hopes that Algoma University would still be able to share his work. And now I encourage you, if you haven't already, to look more at the works of Brian Vallee. So the books that he wrote are Life with Billy, published in 1986, Pariah, and so this is the fictional book that was published in 1991. And now, as I did say before, it was a short run, so it might be a little bit more difficult to find. But then we have Life After Billy, published in 1995. Edwin Alonzo Boyd, The Story of the Notorious Boyd Gang, published in 1997. The Torso Murder, The Untold Story of Evelyn Dick, published in 2001. And finally, The War on Women, published in 2007. Now, as for his television and films that he was A little bit more famous for, we have Just Another Missing Kid, to which he was an associate producer. It was aired in 1982, and it went on to win an Academy Award. Life with Billy, to which he was a writer. It was aired in 1994 as a Canadian television film, and it won 3 Gemini Awards. Behind the Mask series, for the Life and Times TV series. It was aired in 1998 and was a documentary on artist Ken Danby. Unmaking the Myth, The Life and Times of Edwin Alonzo Boyd, aired 2002. The Notorious Mrs. Dick, to which he was a writer and researcher. It was a TV documentary which aired in 2002. Prince of Pot, the U.S. versus Mark Emery, to which he was a researcher, and it aired in 2007. And so there are the works of Brian Vallee. And he did so much for journalism and writing for Canada. But it also appeared that he was a very good friend, very good person. And so I do hope you take the time to learn a little bit more about him, look a little up his works. And so as I was saying, yes, this episode today was going to be a little bit different. And next week's is also going to be a little bit different as well. And so, as always, thanks for listening. Bye.
Have you been to your local museum lately? Visit us at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, located in downtown Sault Ste. Marie, the one with the big clock tower on the top. Our hours of operation are 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tuesday to Saturday. We have 3 floors of exhibits that we constantly work on updating. The whole family is welcome, as we have activity sheets and scavenger hunts with prizes for every kiddo, a discovery gallery full of hands-on learning, and more interactive elements scattered throughout the museum. And don't forget to come say hi and let us know you're a listener of the podcast.